Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala khatimil anbiya. I am thankful to the Staff College for inviting me to share my ideas on Pakistan ideology. It's an extremely important topic and requires quite a bit of concentration on my part and on your part. When you talk about ideology, what do we mean by it? If you go to dictionary meaning, you will find ideology refers to that philosophy on which a people believe, which binds them together, which is taken by them as their national objective. Therefore, for example, communist ideology means those who believe in communism and they believe that communism provides solution for their problems and they are prepared to live and die for it. Therefore, ideology means that system which is foundational for a people, a nation or a country. If we look into our own history, we will find that the subcontinent developed a situation which was very much unusual. In 1857, it was taken over by a colonizing agency from outside. The Britishers colonized us, and then gradually the concept developed that we should have freedom. For that, various organizations were established, Muslim League, Indian Congress and so on and so forth. I will not go into details about that. But ultimately, they developed a consensus among Hindu population of the country that this is one single India, and therefore, all those who live in this territory are Indians. On the other hand, Muslim League and particularly Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and later Allama Iqbal and then Quaid-e-Azam, they elaborated on what they mean by it. Allama Iqbal defined very clearly that Muslims are not Indians or not Indian nationals, but they are Muslims who are living in India. Therefore, their identity is Islam. They are Muslim Ummah, Muslim Millah. The same approach was taken by Quaid-e-Azam, that there are two nations in this country. One call themselves Hindus and they claim that they are the natives of the soil, and therefore they think that whoever is born in that soil is Indian. While we as Muslims believe wherever we are born in North America or South Korea or in subcontinent, whoever is born as a Muslim. Therefore, our base, our identity is not land or language or color, but our identity is our faith. Now, this aspect was very well defined by Allama Iqbal in his Allahabad address, which was delivered in 1930. I read from his address. Islam does not bifurcate the unity of man into an irreconcilable duality of spirit and matter. In Islam, God and universe, spirit and matter, church and state are organic to each other. Man is not citizen of a profane world to be renounced in the interest of a world of a spirit situated elsewhere. To Islam, matter is spirit realizing itself in space and time. These are philosophical words, but what he is saying is that in Islam, there is no separation between state and religion, no separation between worldly and spiritual. Therefore, Muslim Ummah is not ethnic Ummah, it's not linguistic Ummah, it's not territorial Ummah, but Muslim Ummah is universal Ummah, and that is its identity. So, Allama Iqbal came up with the idea that we as Muslim millat, as Muslim nation, have our own culture, faith and our ideology. The same was taken up by other Muslim scholars at that time, particularly Allama Muhammad Asad and Abul Ala Maududi. I will try to skip some of the material just to save the time, and would like to go and see how the founding father Qasim al-Jinnah himself defined what he wanted to have as a nation. Therefore, we will look into a few of the outstanding statements of the Qaid. For example, the Qaid said, I have often made it clear that if Muslims wish to live as honorable and respectable people, there is only one course open to them: fight for Pakistan, live for Pakistan, if necessary, die for achievement of Pakistan, or else Muslims and Islam are doomed. There is only one course open to us: to organize our nation, and it is by our own dint of arduous and sustained and determined efforts that we create strength and support our people, not only to achieve our freedom and independence, but to be able to maintain it and live according to Islamic ideals and principles. The modern democratic form of government is not suitable to the genius of the Indian people. We want a true democracy in accordance with Islam, and not a parliamentary government of the Western or Congress type. This is in 1945, which means that Pakistan ideology in view of Quaid-e-Azam was very simple: Islamic ideas and principles, and he was very clear that Islam is not a matter of a personal faith either. It is said very frequently, and unfortunately our educational system for last 200 years has been telling us that religion is your personal matter, because that is what was said in England, it was said in France, it was said in America, and we are just copying that for 200 years. While the Quaid-e-Azam very clearly stated that Islam is not just a religion, it is a culture. It has its own legal system, its own economic system, its own social system, and unless it is allowed to operate freely, it cannot fulfill requirements of Muslims, and it is not possible in a secular state nor in a nationalistic state. What Congress wanted was an Indian national state where all those who are born in India become nationals. What Quaid-e-Azam said was that two nations, one who have their identity in Hinduism and the other who have identity in the Islam, and Islam cannot survive and live in a situation where the majority rule is in the hands of a community which by virtue of majority can impose whatever they want. In the undivided subcontinent, if a parliament was made, what will be the proportion? The 10 to 12% Muslims will have that much proportion in their representation. If 80%, 70%, 60% vote says this is what is supposed to be in the country, can Muslims avoid that? Therefore, what Quaid-e-Azam said was that Western parliamentary system does not suit. We need Islamic principles to be operationalized in state, in governance, in economy, everywhere. So, the idea of nationhood came up at ideological level, at practical level, at political level, at cultural level, and Muslim community in the subcontinent before Pakistan came into existence got fully convinced that we are a separate nation, and as separate nation we need to have a separate homeland. For this homeland, since 1930 there were speculations going on. How should we visualize it? One suggestion came from two or a few graduates who were studying in Cambridge, Chaudhry Ahmad Ali and Khwaja Abdur Rahim. They came up with the idea that where we have majority in northwestern part of the region, let's put together those areas where Muslims are in majority. So, they said that Punjab has a large community of Muslims, so we take P from that. Afghanistan has solid Muslim majority and very few non-Muslims, we take A from Afghanistan. STAN covers Sindh, Balochistan and other areas. Therefore, in the northern part we make one unit, one state which may be called Pak-Satan without I, Pak-Satan, P-A-K-S-T-A-N. This was the proposal which he wrote in his letter, and then he wrote a small article, Now or Never, which is available as a document, and there he said that we Muslims of this subcontinent would like to have this. The idea was further discussed, elaborated at many forums, and Muslim League came with the idea that not only this unit, but wherever Muslims have majority, those should become independent states, like the state of Junagadh and state of Hyderabad, Deccan, areas where Muslims, or Bihar, where or the so called East Pakistan at that time, but now Bangladesh, there they had the majority of Muslims. So, these become independent states, and they all become a federation. This was the idea being debated. I will not go again in details, we can discuss those in question answers, but the idea was that wherever Muslims constitute a large number, majority, they should be having authority to rule and live by their own culture, not under dominance of a majority which was definitely committed to Hinduism and nationalism. The vision of Pakistan as a nation was again a matter of ongoing process. One single slogan that was raised throughout the Pakistan movement was, what's the meaning of Pakistan? And the response was, Pakistan means La ilaha illallah. Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. This was the slogan which was raised throughout the campaign. And on that, it's very interesting that some of the writings which have not been quite properly understood and projected are still available to us, such as writing of Allama Muhammad Asad. Allama Asad was a European who became Muslim, and during his very close interaction with Allama Iqbal and then Quaid-e-Azam, he became a part of Pakistan movement. He writes on what do we mean by Pakistan, and he says, If the meaning of our struggle for Pakistan is truly to be found in the words La ilaha illallah, our present behavior must be a testimony of our coming nearer and nearer to this ideal, that is, becoming better Muslims not only in our words but in our actions as well. It should be our leaders' duty to tell their followers that they must become better Muslims today in order to be worthy of Pakistan tomorrow, instead of which they merely assure us that we shall become better Muslims as soon as Pakistan is achieved. This is what was said by some Muslim leaders, that we will become very good Muslims once we achieve the country. But Asad was writing that we should become today good Muslims so we could run Pakistan without any corruption or any problems. Therefore, he says, as I have already said, Muslim masses instinctively realize the Islamic purpose of Pakistan and genuinely desire a state of affairs in which La ilaha illallah would become the starting point of the country's development. Besides that, we find that the concept of Pakistan as an Islamic community and state was very, very clear to the founder right from the beginning. For example, in 1940, in the Muslim League Indian Congress, in the Indian Muslim League convention, he says, it's extremely difficult to appreciate why our Hindu friends fail to understand the real nature of Islam and Hinduism. They are not religions in the strict sense of the word, but are in fact different and distinct social orders, and it is a dream that the Hindus and Muslims can ever evolve a common nationality. And this misconception of one Indian nation has gone far beyond the limits and is the cause of most of your troubles, and will lead India to destruction if we fail to revive our nation in time. The Hindus and Muslims belong to two different religious philosophies, social customs and literature. They neither intermarry nor interdine together, and indeed they belong to two different civilizations which are based mainly on conflicting ideas and conceptions. Their aspects of life are different. It is quite clear that Hindus and Muslims derive their aspirations from different sources of history. They have different epics, different heroes, different episodes. Very often the hero of one is the foe on the other hand. Likewise, their victories and defeats overlap. To yoke together two such nations under a single state, one as numerical minority and other as a majority, must lead to growing discontent and final destruction of any fabric that may be so built up of government of such a state. Therefore, he made it very clear that Muslims and Hindus cannot live under one single state. There has to be a separate state for Muslims, and this was again and again repeated by him in not one but so many statements. It is very interesting to see. In 1943, addressing the hostel parliament of Ismail Yusuf College, Bombay, the Qaid-e-Azam says, in Pakistan we shall have a state which shall be run according to the principles of Islam. It will have its cultural, political and economic structure based on principles of Islam. The non-Muslims need not fear because of this, for fullest justice will be done to them. They will have their full cultural, religious, political, economic rights safeguarded. As a matter of fact, they will be more safeguarded than in the present day so-called democratic parliamentary form of government. This is as back as 1943. And then he talks to on various occasions, for example, addressing the naval, civil and air force officers in Karachi, October 11, 1947. He says, the establishment of Pakistan, for which we have been striving for the last 10 years, is by the grace of God an established fact, but the creation of a state of our own was means to an end and not an end itself. The idea was that we should have a state in which we could live and breathe as free men, and in which we could develop according to our own lights and culture, where principles of Islamic social justice could find free play. Not only that, but we find addressing a rally at Lahore University Stadium, October 30th, 1947. The Qaid says, "Do not be overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. There are many an example in history of young nations building themselves up by sheer determination and force of character. You are made of sterling material and are second to none. Why should you also not succeed like many others, like your own forefathers? You are only to develop the spirit of the mujahids. You are a nation whose history is replete with people of wonderful gifts, character and heroism. Live up to your traditions and add to it as a chapter of glory. All I require of you now is that every one of us to whom this message reaches must vow to himself and be prepared to sacrifice his all if necessary in building up Pakistan a bulwark of Islam." That means a fortress of Islam, and as one of the greatest nations whose ideal is peace within and peace without. Not only that, but addressing at Sibbi Darbar, February 14, 1948, "It's my belief that our salvation lies in following the golden rules of conduct set for us by our great leader, lawgiver, the Prophet of Islam. Let us lay the foundations of our democracy on the basis of truly Islamic ideals and principles. Our Almighty has taught us that our decisions in affairs of the state shall be guided by discussions and consultation." He quotes from Surah Shura, ayah number 38. Then addressing the United States people in February 48, he says, "This dominion, which represents the fulfillment in a certain measure of the cherished goal of 100 million Muslims of the subcontinent, came into existence on August 15, 47. Pakistan is the premier Islamic state and the fifth largest in the world." Addressing again the men of Ek regiment at Malirkand, February 21, 1948, the Qaid says, "You have fought many a battle on the far-flung fields of the globe and get rid the world of the fascist menace and make it safe for democracy. Now you have to stand guard over the development and maintenance of Islamic democracy, Islamic social justice and the equality of mankind in your own native soil." Having put all these in front of you, let me point out a very interesting fact. I said a while ago that when Rahmat Ali wrote a letter and an article in which he proposed the name Pakistan, when Pakistan resolution was presented in Lahore, March 23, 1940, the following day, Chaudhry Rahim, Khwaja Rahim, who was in Lahore, invited Qaid-e-Azam and Muslim leadership to his home for a cup of tea. And here is the report of that. On March 24th, 1940, a day after Lahore resolution, Khwaja Abdul Rahim, one of those who in Cambridge proposed the name of the country, invited the Qaid at his residence. The Qaid told him, "Rahim, the name you gave in 1930 is highly talked about in Hindu press." Khwaja Rahim asked the Qaid, "Then what should be the name in your view? Allama Iqbal has already endorsed that." The Qaid said, "If you people and the Muslim nation like this name, I have no objection, except in the name you have on the pamphlet, Pakistan, add I, which stands for Islam and is the link between these provinces." Now this fact which I have placed before you has never been told to the nation for over 70 years. that the name Pakistan was modified by the Qaid by putting I in it and defining what he means by I. It was not accidental. Otherwise, your name of the country would have been Pak-Satan, but not Pakistan. When he suggested that I, and then he justified and said, these provinces which you are mentioning can only be united by this strong link. Therefore, I must be there. Now, unfortunately, for last 70 years, we have been hearing the so-called intellectuals, liberals and so on and so forth, who say that Pakistan is just like other countries, and therefore Islam is personal faith of the people. But if you look into Qaid's own life and try to find out how he lived himself and how was his commitment to Islam, you will be amazed. You will be amazed on his confidence and trust in Islam, and not just as personal faith, but as a complete way of life. I will just refer to a statement he made on September 8, 1945 in his message. The Qaid says, what is it that keeps the Muslims united, and what is bedrock and sheet anchor of the community? It is Islam. Everyone except those who are ignorant know that the Quran is general code of the Muslims, a religious, social, civil, commercial, military, judicial, criminal and penal code. It regulates everything from ceremonies of religion to those of daily life. It's a complete code regulating the whole Muslim society in every development of life, collectively and individually. What he is saying is, it's not a matter of individual faith, but Islam provides collective guidance in every aspect of life, and therefore it is responsibility of the state to make sure, and that is why the Constitution of Pakistan makes it a requirement on the state to make sure that people of Pakistan are properly educated in Quran and Sunnah. They establish institutions for guiding Muslims in how to live their social life, economic life and so on. Quaid-e-Azam himself, when he was inaugurating the research wing of State Bank of Pakistan, said very clearly, this economic system of the West cannot work, and I will be waiting for your recommendations based on Islamic principles. So, throughout his life, he was advocating Pakistan ideology in very simple words, that Islamic way of life, Islam not as personal faith, but Islam as culture, Islam as economic system, Islamic family system, Islamic education system, Islamic defense system, every aspect of life is to be molded and developed in view of Islam. Just one last quotation from him, and that again goes back to 1939, which means that whatever he is saying is said uniformly, not momentarily. Addressing All India Muslim League annual convention, he says, I have seen enough of the world and possess a lot of wealth. I have enjoyed all comforts of life. Now my only desire is to see the Muslims flourish and prosper as an independent community. I want to leave this world with a clean conscience and content that the feeling that Jinnah had not betrayed the cause of Islam and the Muslims. I do not want your praise nor any certificate. I only want that my heart, my conscience and my faith should prove at the time of my death that Jinnah died defending Islam and cause of the Muslims. May my God testify that Jinnah lived and died a Muslim, fighting against the forces of kuffar and holding the flag of Islam high. How can a person who was bold, confident, never played with words, make such clear statements and yet our so-called liberal intellectuals keep on saying that he wanted a Western type of democracy in Pakistan. This is the question that requires further research. I have just tried to let the Qaid speak to you directly through his quotations, and I invite anyone to do more research and find out what was his vision of Pakistan ideology. If I want to summarize, it was simply that the country should flourish with the ideology of Islam, which does not mean Islam as projected by the Islamophobic minds, those who think Islam means just going out and killing anyone in the name of Islam, or going out and whipping anyone. All those Hollywood versions of Islam were never in front of him. What he knew was, because of his legal studies, because of his deep understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, he knew very well that Islam has provided the most fair, most just system where there is no clergy, there is no group of so-called mullahs who dictate and rule everything, but Islam means the system the Prophet, peace be upon him, established in Medina, which was fair, where Jews lived with dignity, Muslims lived with honor, and where peace prevailed. Therefore, Islamic system is not a matter of what we are told by Hollywood or a few Orientalists or a few people who have myopic vision, who cannot see totality of Islam. They look only on some of the misdeeds done by Muslims in the name of Islam and generalize that this is Islam, and they are wrong. Islam means what it exists in the Quran and Sunnah, and accordingly it is that system which alone can provide development, progress, scientific advancement, and all kind of security. Therefore, for Pakistan particularly, its creation, its sustainability, its development, all are linked with clarity of mind about its ideology. I have shared with you very briefly in how the Qaid looked on the ideology. I have left a number of longer references which can again be discussed in question answer session, but the idea was just to let you have very briefly the gist of my presentation, and then we can have more extended discussion on the points you raise on these various aspects I have highlighted. May Allah bless you all. Wa rabbil alameen.